Welcome back to American Agenda. Every Thursday, the U.S. Department of Labor reports how many Americans filed for unemployment over the week prior. That brings us to our tweet of the day. The U.S. Labor Department tweeted that for the week ending April 18th last week, about 4.4 million people filed for first-time unemployment claims. That brings the total number of job losses over the past 5 weeks to 26 million. To put that in perspective, the previous one-week high for unemployment insurance claims was 695,000 in 1982. What will it take to bring our economy back, and how quickly can it happen? To weigh in, let's ask our A-plus panel for the day. HerMoney.com editor-in-chief Catherine Tuggle and former SEC Division of Investment Management Director Norm Champ. So, Catherine, let me ask you first, your response to these numbers. I don't want to get used to 4 million, but we're seeing this. We've seen this over the past month.
Right. No one wants to get used to 4 million. However, it's worth pointing out that unemployment claims have gone down steadily over the course of the last 3 weeks. So it looks like we may have hit our peak in terms of seeing those 6 million numbers.
Norm, what do you think it's going to take to get our economy back?
We need to get people back to work. These numbers are terrible. Each one represents a personal tragedy. But I think that the president has outlined some phases to get people back to work. That's going to have to be coupled with protective measures so that people feel safe going back to work. We cannot sustain this that much longer, this level of unemployment. So we need to get back where people can get back to their jobs. Exactly how that's going to happen in a safe manner is something I really haven't seen clarity yet on.
Yeah, that's interesting, Norm. I think it is going to be a challenge. I think everybody wants to go forward and find it. Let me ask you this. I think the federal government will spend more money just on these packages related to coronavirus than it will take in as revenue this year, Norm.
Well, we were already about running, close to $1 trillion deficit. So this is going to exacerbate that problem. So we are building up these deficits. It's all the more reason that we will have to get the economy going, because we can only grow our way out of this. The amount of debt is very substantial. I'd say also on the individual level, for people who have lost their jobs, think about trying to cut expenses as much as you can. I know that's difficult in this time, but as I talk about in my book, Mastering Money, getting costs down is one way to stick it out a little longer through this as you collect benefits. So think about discretionary spending, automatic TV, streaming apps, those kind of things. They can be cut during this period of difficulty.
And Catherine, what is your advice?
Low-income households are being hit harder. 1/2 of low-income households are reporting that one or more people in the household are out of work, whereas only 1/3 of high-income households are reporting that someone is out of work. So I think it's especially important if you didn't have that big of an emergency fund to start with, and if you're not in a higher salary bracket, just like Norm said, to cut those expenses as much as you possibly can during this time.
Yeah, if only the government had listened to both of your advice in the past. Let's take a look, by the way, at some of the polls that we have regarding some swing states, and we have 4 of them. I wanted to show them. And we'll start with Florida, where Joe Biden, former vice president, is ahead of the president. And then we move on to wherever you want to go, guys. Michigan, 50% to 41%. Again, the vice president. And that's beyond the margin of error, by the way. That's why something like that's significant. We have 2 more, and that includes Pennsylvania, which Biden is ahead. Again, beyond the margin of error. And yes, we know that Hillary Clinton was supposed to win because she won all the polls virtually. And then Wisconsin, closer within the margin there. Does this come down, Catherine, to how this turns out with the virus?
It's such a great question. Local and state economies, a lot of states are chomping at the bit to get back to work. I think everybody is ready to be doing social distancing, to open everything back up. But I think at the end of the day, it's not going to be something that can come from the federal government, because the virus is reaching its peak at different times in different places.
Norm, when you see those numbers, what stands out to you?
You often have had, if you go back in history, we've often had polls showing the challenger up in these kind of months, well before an election. Usually it tightens up around the conventions in the summer. we're not going to have probably traditional conventions this summer. So we'll have to see how it plays out. I do think if we can get the economy moving again where it was before all this happened, and we may not get back all the way to there right away, obviously, but if we can get the economy moving again, I think these polls are going to tighten up and potentially show the president ahead.
Norm, the taxes are going up, aren't they?
Well, we had the federal tax cut before, right in January of 18, which got us partly the boom that we were having in the economy. Traditionally, you would think actually you wouldn't try to raise taxes because that tends to not actually raise a lot of revenue and it damps income. So I would suspect that at the federal level, probably an effort to try to pull taxes down and get growth back.
Norm, seriously? I mean, you really think that they're going to try to cut again to justify it with the supply side approach, which added to the debt to begin with? I mean... No, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to suggest a cut. Just I think they'll keep them flat. I don't think there'll be a raise. Trying to do a raise when you're trying to recover is very tough. Fair enough.
So I think they'll stay.
Well, they would try to tax the rich, however that's defined, right?
If Biden won and if there's a shift in Congress, potentially would have that. But economics would say that trying to tax people when we're trying to get our growth back is a bad idea. Yeah. So I'd hope people would listen to that.
Catherine, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but just what do you think it's going to take for the president to turn those numbers around and gain some more momentum?
I think it's all about the economy at this point. Maybe more states will start to follow Georgia's lead. I think people want to feel the feelings that we were feeling just 5 short weeks ago when things were better than they had ever been. And I do think that recovery is going to be slow, but hopefully we can start to see some uptick really happening by November.
Catherine, you say better than they had ever been, but one thing this experience seems to magnify is the difference between the top echelon of our economy versus the bottom, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think, gig workers are being hurt especially hard right now, and it'll be interesting to see where the economy goes from here in terms of full-time employment versus part-time employment versus gig workers. Are those full-time jobs still going to be available? I think that's what everybody wants to know is their benefits, their health care, their 401k. These are all really important questions that are hanging in the balance right now.
Yeah.
Helpful insights. Catherine Tuggle and Norm Champ, thank you so much. Coming up, we'll have continuing coverage of the coronavirus crisis.